Welcome back to Left in Kentucky. After a couple of weeks of activities, I am Roberto Henriquez,
And Dickerson.
and yeah, it's good to be back. There's been a lot going on. We had, I think, first thing we've got to talk about is our hands-off protest in Florence, Kentucky last week. That was freaking amazing.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was just I think it may be my new or really close to my top event that we've ever done since the founding of this group in 2017. I
Yeah.
mean, definitely the biggest. Estimated 650 to 700 people out there on Mall Road. Um, there was one particular section of sidewalk that had 200 people all scrunched in on one section of sidewalk. That was probably the hardest part of the day was getting people to spread out.
Yeah.
But of course, that's how we are as human beings. We scrunch together because we want to talk while we're doing all of these things and chant together and this, that, and the other thing. Um, the reception by the people driving was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, lots of support. I think it is the most support we've gotten from drivers by of any event we've done,
Yeah,
even the one on the suspension bridge.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And you know, we predicted, and thought that because it was a Saturday and doing it there, and it was the weekend before Easter weekend, we assumed that there would be a lot of shoppers out
Hmm.
for that reason. And my mind was blown by just how many people were out. I mean, lines of cars sitting in traffic at the stoplights. Almost, it was kind of reminiscent of Christmas, although not quite that bad. To the point that heck, there was one accident, and I watched it happen. It was like, wow. It
Yeah,
just,
I grew up in Florence, and I mean, I've never seen traffic backed up like it was that day. I mean, there were several times where it was very easy for me to walk down Mall Road more quickly than the cars were able to progress down Mall Road.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And the best part about it was there were. I mean, I tried to make it as much of the length of Mall Road as I could.
Hmm.
Um, doing various things like, hey, we need this up here, we need that over there. I never did make it end to end. I did make it to a big chunk of it, probably three quarters of it, but the 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 vast variety of people that we had with us, right? There
Hmm.
were all age groups, there were all socioeconomic status, there were all, uh, I'm gonna say, all flavors of people.
Yeah.
Every color of the rainbow. It was such a beautiful thing,
Yeah,
and
it was amazing.
uh,
I was really impressed with the age variety that we had.
yeah,
Um, a lot of our protests, it seems to be, middle-aged or older adults, maybe with one or two kids sprinkled in because they're there with their parents or grandparents or something. But this, I mean, there were large groups of young adults, teenagers, adults, families. It was pretty amazing.
it was. It was. I mean, there were, like you said, there were even kids out there. It was such a beautiful day.
Hmm.
I am so glad, and you know how anxious I was
Oh yeah.
about making the call. Originally scheduled with all the other protests around the country that took place on April 5th.
Hmm.
But you and I deliberated and brought some other people in on the decision because of all the flooding in Kentucky. The weather was horrific on the 5th. And um it wasn't quite as bad as like the day before, but people were still suffering the effects. It's so many people reach out that were like, please, please postpone it. Please postpone it. We're evacuating. We have to evacuate right now.
Right.
But people took the time to reach out and be like, I really want to be a part of this, you know, which just made it all that much more heartfelt and spectacular because people showed up in spades.
Yeah.
It was just an amazing
And
thing.
we had a number of people that went to both events. I mean, there were several people there who told me, that they had been at um the one the week before in Cincinnati, and then or we did have, unfortunately, I talked to one person who had driven up from like southern Grant County the weekend before because they hadn't gotten word that we had postponed, but they drove back up for our protests and they were there. And it was cool
Aw,
that they were that committed to wanting to be a part of this, that they're like,
right.
we're back.
W- Right. And we actually did have a handful of people that drove up from Lexington as well,
Wow.
who went to the Lexington one the week before. But you've got to consider, I mean, um, even though Louisville went forward with theirs on the 5th, just I think it was the day before, they had a freaking tornado touchdown,
Yep.
down there. The flooding in um, Frankfurt is so bad. And the damage is so bad with, I know there were public calls for, um, the city, county, whomever, to put out, um, oh, what are they called? The giant dump bins.
Dumpsters.
Yeah, God bless America.
Words
I'm,
are hard.
I know I'm having one of those days. Having dumpsters out on the sidewalks because people are having to take we're having to take big pieces of furniture and that out of the house because after 3 days mold was starting to grow and the smell was getting so bad and they couldn't get all the water out of the
Yeah.
houses and stuff like that. So even as of last week when we did as of Saturday when we did our event, they were still working. I mean, this is going to take a long, long time. And so in our area, in the Congressional District 4 area, we had people reach out from Demossville, Butler, Falmouth,
Right.
Boone
Well,
County.
Falmouth and Butler were both mandatory evacuations were ordered.
Right, right, for the complete area. Covington, there was for sections of Covington, it was mandatory get out.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Plus, we had there was all kinds of storm damage. I mean, there's that
Yeah.
one picture of the house in Erlanger that a tree collapsed right in the middle of it, and it was a ginormous tree.
Yeah.
I mean, there was that
I think
kind of damage everywhere.
And I think most people, I know we got some feedback that some people were disappointed. A couple people were a little upset that we had postponed. But I think, again, our top concern is for everybody's safety. Um,
Absolutely.
and, I think most everybody understood that. And we definitely had many, many people that were very grateful that we postponed it because that allowed them to participate when they would not have been able to participate at
Or
all.
absolutely the positives, 20 times more than the negatives for sure. And I think the proof is in the pudding of how, successful the event was. I mean, we had um a reporter come down from Columbus, Ohio to cover it. Um the Cincinnati Enquirer was there. There was something that went out. There were two different articles that went out from the Cincinnati Enquirer. This article went out. Lincoln KY picked up their stuff, but used a bunch of different pictures. And
Hmm.
the pictures, my God, they just keep. I ended up downloading like 150 of
Oh yeah, there's a
them. and
ton of pictures
and
out there.
that's not even all of them. And there's
Yeah.
pictures and video and the drone coverage. It was just, oh well.
Now the
I could go
interesting,
on forever because it was so awesome.
and here, so let's talk because we had several people ask about uh, news coverage, and why wasn't there more news coverage, and why wasn't there more on the articles and stuff like that. So I know, Ann, you had a couple of interviews with news folks. How long how long do you think the reporters in total, the interviews you did, talked with you, that you guys talked together?
Oh, that's the hilarious part.
Yeah, how much material did they have? Did you talk for like an hour, hour and
Yeah,
a
an
half,
hour
two
and a
hours,
half, hour
hour
and
and
a
a half?
half, and
Okay.
yeah, and the article
How
had
much
come
got
out.
used?
In the one article, it was just a picture, and in the other article, it was like one sentence, and I'm like, what? I mean, I kind of get it, kind of, sort of, a little bit, because you know where we're located in northern Kentucky, and we talk about this all the time.
Yep.
Our the vast majority of our news coverage for anything is out of Cincinnati. So of course Cincinnati is going to be their primary point of focus. We're kind of, just the, I don't know, the cousin that comes for family dinner
Right.
from time to time or whatever.
But
Um
Lake Northern Kentucky should have covered more.
right. What they didn't, they took from what the Enquirer put out there.
Right.
So, you for every I will say this, compared to when we were doing all this stuff in 20, um when we started up in 2017, it was really hard at first to get people any coverage at all, because
Right.
we were poo-pooed left, right, and center until it grew, right?
Yep.
Now we have had coverage of every single thing that we've done so far this year. I will say that. Each time, what's interesting is each time it's been a different source. Um, so it's getting better. It just needs to evolve even more. I would love to see, more out of Northern Kentucky that was organic
Yeah.
from these little small town publications, this, that, and the other. But
Hmm.
so many of them don't even have a print version anymore. They just do online,
Right. Oh yeah.
right?
Right.
So it is
Yeah.
what it is.
It,
But
it's really tough to get for us to get press coverage.
it is.
And that's why, I think that's why platforms like this, like our podcast, um, which is available, and people sharing that's important. Our social networking, that they're sharing with each other and sharing with others outside of our network to bring new people in. That's really why that is so important.
Right. And, in Kentucky, I mean, it's so funny when you look at Kentucky, like on a map of the country, and you see the sheer size of it, and the probably, this may be a gross overstatement, I don't know, but it seems like 90% of the news comes from either Lexington or Louisville. It's like there's two
Hmm.
cities in Kentucky and everything else is trees. No, it's not. We got people everywhere. It's why we're divided the way we are, with north, east, south, west, and everything in between. But it's a lot. It says a lot to me, and this is an important issue for today, about the amount of journalism that has been
Hmm.
lost, right?
Right.
Print media has just disappeared, and it's a shame. I have a great appreciation for the independent media right
Right.
now, like all of the people on Substack and places like that are trying to get out the news. um I just wish we had more of that kind of reporting and coverage, in our area as well as the other areas of Kentucky. I will say that the Kentucky Lantern is doing their damnedest,
Yeah.
as far as covering this kind of stuff. I just don't think they can get it everywhere because they're much smaller. They're not as big as like the Herald Leader or the Courier Journal.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, so it was a good event, and we're happy with that. And let's see, we're starting to talk about our next one. I know one thing that you and I did talk a little bit about was that I definitely think everybody needed the hands-off protest, and there were so many things that everybody was focused on and concerned about. But it did seem a little scattershot, a little unfocused. And I think going forward, we should probably do a better job of really focusing in on one or two issues or a cohesive group of issues, so that we can speak very clearly about that and people are very focused on, okay, this is why we're protesting and this is what we're wanting to get done with this.
Right, because you and I know are 100% simpatico on this that we you don't believe in protesting just for the sake of protesting.
Right.
There has to be an impetus. There has to be a goal, a reason, like you said, a message. Although, uh, I think from my perspective, I think like the big organizations that all came together because let's face it, we're from the local aspect, we adjust what comes down from national to what works, what's doable in our area, what we think
Hmm.
is best to achieve our goals in our area. And I think what came down, the reason that for some it may have felt more scattershot is because it was so broad, like you said, the hands off, and then it was pretty much, you know, um, whatever issue any individual coming to one of these events felt was most important to them should gear their hands off messaging, their signs, what have you, towards that. But I also think it showed just the sheer volume of issues that we're dealing with at one time,
Yeah.
and why people feel so overwhelmed because there are so many things, and for each person that prioritized issue is going to be different. So I kind of see both sides of that.
Yeah.
um Although I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say most of the messaging came down to probably four top things. You would see an oddball thing out there. Although probably one of my favorites was we had Spider-Man at our event.
I know, I saw that. That was great.
I don't know who that was. I hope they listen because shout out to Spider-Man
Yep.
who has the iconic sign, you know,
With great
um,
power comes great responsibility.
yes, and it was just so perfect. And I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yep.
It was great. Absolutely just great.
Yeah, it was top notch. So I know there's been a call for a National Day of Action for this Saturday, the 19th. And we have not planned anything because we had the protest last week. Plus, with it being Easter weekend, we were a little concerned that that might be it might be tough to get people to come out on Easter weekend because most people have family things, and especially around here, a lot of people have church activities around Easter weekend.
Well,
Uh,
and they travel too. I
yeah,
mean, and these are things that are planned long in advance. They're
yeah,
annual events.
yeah.
So,
Although they seem to be getting shorter and shorter in the planning. But so I do know, so I have found that in Cincinnati, they're doing one at Pyatt Park from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then in Louisville, they're doing one on at West Jefferson and 6th Street from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then Lexington is having one from 2 to 5 p.m. at the courthouse plaza, the Stevens Courthouse Plaza. So feel
yeah,
free to attend those if you're looking to do something this Saturday.
yeah. And I mean, from our area, any of those would be a doable event. The most you're going to drive is probably an hour.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
yeah,
Cincinnati's the closest. It won't take an hour to get there. It's
right.
right.
Well,
That's
it's closest for us, but if you're out in the eastern half of the district,
right,
Lexington might be closer.
right, right. And same as you go south within our
Right.
district.
Or the western end, since we go almost from Ashland to Louisville.
Right? I mean, it just depends on where you are in the district, which one's going to be closest for you. But again, if the maximum amount you have to drive to get to where you want to go is an hour, that's not terrible, especially since for some reason each one of these events is running like 3 hours.
Right. Um, and just to remind people, I am maintaining a resistance calendar of protest events and actions. You can check that out on my website, roberto4ky.org. And it's the number four, not spelled out, roberto4ky.org. You can check that out. There's information on there for the events that I can find or I get told about. So if you know of something going on that you don't see on there, please feel free to send us an email at info at
It,
indivisible. What is it?
yeah, info at indivisible.nky.com.
There you go. You can send those and we'll make sure to get those on there. I've just today I was updating the calendar with information on May Day activities, which is on a Thursday. So it'll be interesting to see how uh, those actions go. So far, I found actions in Louisville, Cincinnati, Columbus, and Dayton, Ohio for those. But
And there's a high probability that we will be involved in something as well. We just want
yeah,
to, I think for this one, we're going to check in with some of our partners and ally groups that we work with quite frequently, see if they're in already in the planning stages and do what we can to support them. And then, if no other group is already taking the lead on that, then we may step up and get that out as soon as we can.
yep,
We also have our next meeting, which is Sunday, April 27th, from 2 to 4 at the main branch of the Boone County Library, Public Library System, which is in Burlington, directly off of 18.
yep. Excellent. So make plans to attend. If you can't attend in person, of course, we will be providing a live feed of that, and most likely we'll be streaming that to our YouTube channel to make that available to folks. So if you can't be there, you can still keep up with what's going on at the meetings.
There we go. So I guess after doing, it's kind of funny. This seems to be opposite day for us because usually
hmm
that's the information we save for the end, but we really do have to touch on all of the federal stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think, there's, as everybody knows, there's a lot going on and with the disappearing people and then, well, they're out of the country, so we can't get them back now. There's nothing we can do about it. And the president of El Salvador being like, well, I can't do anything about it, even though it's a prison gulag in his country. Um, it's a pretty scary situation, and the Supreme Court has said that our government, needs to facilitate getting them back, which of course the Trump administration has interpreted as, we won't block them at the border. Um, and then just recently, in the past day, they're found probable cause to hold the U.S. government, Trump administration in contempt of court. So everybody, welcome to the constitutional crisis. Here it is.
Right? I mean, and here's the, you know, just the mind-numbing, mind-blowing thing about that is this. We have an extradition agreement with El Salvador.
Yep.
It should be nothing to get somebody back.
Well, but they haven't, most of them, or I don't think any of them really, but I know most of them, there are no charges.
Right.
So,
We're,
and I think an extradition is based on there being some sort of charge.
well, but the fact of the matter is, and you know, the United States government is paying millions of dollars to El Salvador to house these people, if we're paying for them to be housed, surely they can send back whomever is ordered to come back. They're being paid. Even if we emptied out everybody that was sent there, they still got $15 million. It makes no sense. And speaking specifically about Mr. Abrego Garcia, I forget what's his first name. Starts with a K.
Um,
Camille, something like
that's
that.
a oh, Kilmar. Kilmar.
Kilmar. I knew it
Yeah.
start. I knew it started with K. So his case is so special, and it's really important not to overlook the details. This is a young man who came here as a minor. He was 15 when he came to the country, trying to escape the gangs and everything going on in that country. And he had an older brother who already lived here that he came to the United States to live with. And he, you know, got permission. He has permission to be here. He is here legally. He is
Hmm.
not here illegally. He has never committed a crime in this country and never been accused of a crime in this country. He never committed a crime in El Salvador. He was never charged with a crime in El Salvador because he left when he was 15.
Yep.
And he's been here all that time. He's even has court order from that time, from when he originally came, saying under uh, no circumstances was he to be deported, and especially not deported to El Salvador. So the government just screwed the pooch 6 ways to Sunday from every direction you can possibly name. And they readily admit it. This is he came here as a boy, grew into a man, married an American citizen. They have children together. He's working as and is a on the path to become what's it called? A journeyman.
Oh yeah, journeyman electrician.
Yes. So he all of these wonderful, amazing things. If you ever thought that there was no such thing as the American dream anymore, he was living it until his worst nightmare came true, until he was kidnapped and sent out of the country. I mean, and that's what it was. It was kidnapping.
Yeah.
So, what's going to happen now? And I think it can't be overstated that the Supreme Court ruled unanimously 9-0 against the Trump administration in stating that he has to be returned.
Yep. No, and that's why that defines the constitutional crisis right there.
Absolutely.
The executive branch completely ignoring the judicial branch, which
Right.
is there is a check and balance.
Right. And, you know, I just,
And here's the really scary part because um, I've had people say, well, but that, they're not sending citizens there. It's like, well, how do we know? Because there's been no due process.
yeah, and that,
They're just saying, oh, these people aren't citizens. We're kidnapping them and sending them out of the country to an out of the country prison. But there's no due process. There's no
right.
review of paperwork. There's no judgment. So who's to say they aren't already or won't start grabbing citizens off the street?
Right. And it's also already been pointed out that they've misidentified a lot of the men by their
Hmm.
tattoos. Like, what? You know,
Yeah.
as soon, even if you come into this country and are an undocumented person, as soon as you are on U.S. soil, you have rights. And one of those rights, like you said, is due process.
Yep.
And the government is currently acting as if that part of the Constitution does not exist and that they do not have to obey it. And patting themselves on the back, proud of the
Yeah.
way that we are treating human beings, or actually mistreating them in just some of the most heinous ways that anybody could imagine. And the other thing is this: if you go online, you will find that Kristi Noem has these, basically glamour shots of herself
Oh yeah, those are disgusting.
inside this prison in front of a single cage packed full of these men. Two Republicans from DC, I think one a senator, one a congressperson, also went down and had their glamour shots in front of these men. One of them, a young man, a young congressman, giving the two thumbs up sign, standing in front of these men.
Yeah.
And yet, the senator from, was it Maine or Maryland, where Mr. Garcia was taken, went down yesterday to Venezuela and, was seen in the airport. He was on camera and then he interviewed last night. And they're denying him access.
You mean El Salvador?
Yeah. What did I say?
You said Venezuela.
I don't know. Ah, because we're sending people who supposedly belong to Venezuelan gangs
Right.
to El Salvador. Which, if you think they were part of a Venezuelan gang, why aren't we sending them to Venezuela? That's another part that's just mind
Well,
blowing to me.
Venezuela won't take them. So,
Right? So, it just it's all so crazy and so difficult to keep track of. But if you want to go have a glamour shot done, you're welcome to go in. But if you want to go and do some actual checking on people to determine their condition, they right now they won't even, you know, let him talk on the phone to get proof of life.
yep. And normally, right, you have organizations like the International Red Cross and Red Crescent who help monitor prisoners in different locations. They don't even have access to these prisoners.
Right.
So who knows what human rights abuses are being hurled upon them?
Well, and the other thing is, under normal circumstances, right, the U.S. Embassy there would be the main point of contact for any kind of negotiations between the two administrations as far as getting these individuals back. And they have received nothing from the Trump administration, no contact
Nope.
about doing anything with regard to these prisoners. It's absolutely insane. And the fact that they readily admit that they made a mistake. Oops, we're sorry.
Oh, they changed their mind. Now they're saying they didn't make a mistake.
Oh God, I missed that.
Yeah, that
The,
that was new, I think, yesterday.
this terminal case of whiplash is just, it's just daunting, what's going on. I mean, I remember the first go around, the big thing was the children in cages.
Hmm.
And to this day, here we are 8 years later, and there are still, they lost 1,500 children
Yep.
who were ripped from their parents at the border, who were adopted out illegally, and they kept no records
Yep.
of these kids. So there's no way. And depending on the age of those kids 8 years ago, a significant number of them were so young they wouldn't even be able to remember or tell you where they came from, what their parents' names were, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they're now buried within the United States, um, adopted into families, or for all we know, are sitting in, foster care somewhere, whatever.
Yeah.
But there's no records of them. And now we're dealing with this. I mean, what is it with this obsession with treating people with no respect, no dignity, no compassion, no nothing? And what were they doing? They were freaking working.
Yeah. And for all this administration's flag waving and flag groping and all that stuff, I have never seen a group of people that seem to hate America and hate the Constitution as much as they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like they just as soon throw it on the ground and trample on it.
Yeah. Well, they have much more respect for just that piece of cloth than anything that it stands for,
Yes. Yes. I
right?
mean,
They're in love with the piece of cloth.
yes, but not what it means.
Yeah,
A hundred,
not what it means, not what it stands for.
100%.
So, and every time I hear them talk about freedom and Constitution and America and loving America and making America great and all that bullshit, it just makes my freaking blood boil.
Well, and no, I just don't understand where this hatred comes from, and the belief that this kind of treatment of other people is okay, when in fact, if you aren't if you don't have one of the indigenous tribes DNA in your system, you have no right to say anything. We're all from immigrants. That's how this country was founded.
Yep,
Was and we've just done nothing but damage ever since.
yep, absolutely.
I don't get it. And these are the same people who thump their Bibles and talk about Christian nationalism and Jesus. Please show me, where does it say that this is acceptable treatment? Because you're not doing anything that is even remotely close to what the teachings are in the Bible.
Yeah,
Not even close.
yeah. I really think what needs to, I think there needs to be a core, at some point here in the near future, I think there needs to be a core demonstration, mass demonstration against the disappearing of people in this
Yes,
country.
yes.
And because that is, I mean, yeah, it's just terrifying. That's how you silence, that's how you silence the people and silence a movement is you take people who speak out and you disappear them.
Well, and Trump has already said that American citizens are next.
Yep.
The quote unquote homegrowns.
Yeah.
So anybody that speaks out against the administration, it can be determined to be a quote unquote homegrown, and then just snatched off the street and sent wherever. The
Yep.
hell?
I mean, he's already been intimidating. They started off by intimidating lawyers that defended people. So now if you're from some law firm that defended somebody that the Trump administration didn't like or somebody that questioned the Trump administration, they put pressure on them and started blocking them out from where they have access to and moved on to the universities now, right? You can't teach that. You can't teach this. You have to give us your records of your students' disciplinary records so that we can decide if we need to punish them or use that as a pretext for whatever horrors we want to visit upon your students. And, Columbia just caved right away. At least Harvard's standing up to them. Hopefully, this is the beginning of those institutions standing against the administration's overstep.
Right. Well, and anyone who has any grasp of world history that doesn't draw the parallels between what happened during Hitler's rise to power and what's happening now. It is just they either don't know history or they just don't care and are turning a blind eye to what's
Yeah,
happening.
we're in that part of history where when you go back and you study World War II and the lead up to World War II and Hitler's rise to power, and people go, well, why didn't anybody do anything to stop him? That's where we are right now. That's the part of the story we're in.
Right.
Why didn't any, we can do stuff to stop him. Now is the time to do it. Not after he's completely plunged us into a global war or made us the global pariah or turned us into a full-blown military state or whatever horrors he has planned for us. Then it's too late. I mean, you still resist, but it's much easier to do it now than it is then.
Right. Well, and I mean, you know, they've already tanked the economy when they were handed the best economy in the world by every metric, by every nation around the world. The United States had the strongest recovery from COVID and the strongest economy in the world as of the time Joe Biden left office. Whether it's not whether you, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not. It's a fact,
Right.
you know, and that doesn't mean that times were great for everyone. I don't know that there's ever been a time where every single person in any given society ever felt like everything was great. You know,
Yep.
there's always going to be those individuals for whom things are not going well. But by all metrics that we use or that the EU uses or that anybody else uses, we were there. And in less than 100 days, it's been tanked. I mean, people are crying when they look at their 401ks. Meanwhile, you have um, an administration, executive branch that is packed full of billionaires. And they're doing press conferences where Trump is basically laughing in the face of the American people by pointing to different of those individuals and said, "Oh, he made $900 million yesterday.
I
He
know.
made he made 1.5 billion yesterday." Meanwhile, I'm crying thinking, how in the hell am I going to recover enough to make it with what I have till the end of my life to make sure that I have enough to take care of me in any given situation? I have nightmares of me having to work the drive through at McDonald's when I'm 85
Yep.
because my nest egg was completely destroyed in less than 100 days. We are heading for a recession. And if we're not careful, they're going to drive it all the way to a depression.
Yep.
Um, the Fed chair was out yesterday saying that because of the uncertainty, because of the tariff wars, everything is uncertain right now, and he ain't making a move when it comes to interest rates. And the market likes stability, and we just don't have it. We have absolute unabashed chaos. And
Hmm.
then there's the issue of insider trading, where it's like certain people in the administration got a heads up ahead of time of what Trump was going to do with backing off of the tariffs in certain areas. And those are the people that he was pointing out that made a killing
Yep.
while everybody else was getting tanked. Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's stuff that normally you wouldn't dare say out loud with other people in the room, much less be bragging and laughing about it in the Oval Office in
right,
front of the press pool. But
right.
here we are.
Yep,
And
yep.
you got to think Martha Stewart's pretty pissed about the whole thing. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've seen more memes of her than I ever needed to see in my lifetime.
Right.
Um, so you've got all of this economic strife. You've got, all of these federal employees who've lost their jobs or are still in the process of losing their jobs. Um, so inflation's going up, unemployment is going up, the market is tanking, people are being disappeared, and you're just standing here with your jaw open going, as an average American person, what do I do? How am I supposed to react to all of this? I think it's a very scary, tenuous time for the vast majority of the country. It's just some people are willing to admit it and some people aren't.
Yeah. And I mean, the first thing, I know it was a rhetorical, but there is something, the first thing you can do is show up and get informed.
Yes,
Show up and get informed.
yes,
That's where you start. That's where you start. So, and we
right.
just happen to
And
have
there's something that go ahead.
no, go ahead. There's something that
I was just going to say there's something for everyone.
mhm,
There are multiple ways to get involved. And no matter how big or how small, that's like you said, that's the important thing. Make a conscious choice, get involved, stay
yep,
informed. But we also have to be careful because there's always bad actors on all sides. We're
yep,
not limited to anyone and one group for certain. Um, but there are good places to turn to for news and keeping up to date and everything else. I love these podcasts
hmm
that some of them have been around a lot longer than others,
yep,
but the Midas Touch is doing an exceptional job.
yep,
They have now taken over both the Joe Rogan show and Fox News
nice.
in terms of listenership. The Bulwark, I love.
hmm
Um, who else?
Obviously, Pod Save America.
Pod Save America. Gosh,
Yeah,
when John Favreau gets all emotional and fired up, oh, he does my heart good.
yep.
Um, who else? Brian Taylor Cohen is doing
Oh,
some.
he's great. Yeah,
He is great. My only complaint with him is, and they all do it to a certain degree. I just think he does it to the nth degree. He tends to have those headlines, that just
I yeah,
overly, what's the word?
overhyped. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and it's
yeah.
just like,
Like the Young Turks. Young Turks do that too.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's not one that I particularly follow,
yeah.
but
I don't
um,
follow them. I drop in every now and then, but they kind of tend to sensationalize a bit.
that's the best word, sensationalized headlines. Thank
Yeah.
you. Aaron, what's his last name? Parnas. I don't know how you pronounce it. He's doing a lot of good work. Um, and I think that's where the vast majority of people are going to end up and are probably better off because these independent podcasters, these independent media outlets, um, you know, don't have the top dogs that a mainstream media news source would have, limiting what they can say, or forcing a certain narrative. The people that are going independent now, just they have a much broader ability in terms of what they're reporting and how they're reporting it and getting the news out as fast as they can. And a large number of them have been in the game for a long time. And so they've got those connections to be able to get the news out sometimes faster than mainstream media does.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if you know it or not, but this was within the last day or so, maybe 2 to 3 days. The Social Security is now going to their only online presence is going to be on X.
No, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah,
That's
Okay,
just mental.
when you think of the people who need access to
Yeah.
Social Security and information,
They're big on social media, I'm sure.
what? Well, not just. I mean, oh,
At least they backstepped on doing away with the telephone support. So they did back off of, remember they were going to do, Social Security was going to do away with phone support. You had to come in person,
yeah.
and they rolled that back. Apparently there was uh, huge numbers of Social Security recipients that started showing up at local offices, and they were overwhelmed. And
Well, especially when they're trying to shut down like half the offices or
yeah,
however many it is. How you going to do that and not have phone access for these people? You, the
yeah,
greatest majority of whom are 65 and older. I mean, that it makes no sense
yeah,
unless your purpose is to stop people from getting their benefits.
yeah. That was part of Elon's Doge bullshit.
This doggy.
Yeah, his doggy. So,
I don't know. I mean, I know it's daunting, and we try to provide information and discussion as well as laugh when we can. Um, I live by something that my grandmother used to tell me all the time, which is sometimes you got to laugh to keep from crying.
yep.
And I think of her every day with the state of things right now, and so inappropriate humor has become a very big thing for me. Um, but hold tight. We're here. Lean on us. Find us. Follow us wherever you can. We're trying to be as accessible to as many people as we can be. And I want to make it very clear too that this is not a partisan thing. We certainly, I
No.
know obviously the greatest of our numbers started with Democrats, but as things continue to progress, we certainly have taken on many independents and Republicans as well that are like, this is not what I voted for,
And
you know.
let's be honest, we could spend a whole episode talking about how lackluster the Democrats' response has been to all of this turmoil. I mean, we could do a whole episode on that, about how they're just not stepping up the way they need to and providing the leadership to the country.
I'm torn on that one, I'm not gonna lie. Only because for the most part they're hamstrung. I mean, they're in the minority. Yes, there are procedural things they can do and they have, but they're in the minority in both chambers.
Yeah,
And
but
but
I'm talking about outside of the chambers even, just providing leadership for the people.
we've
Yeah.
seen some step up.
A
Uh,
few.
I mean, Cory Booker's speech, his 25-hour, 4-minute speech setting the record on the House floor was phenomenal, something I will never forget. Um, you know, I
It was definitely inspirational,
right.
definitely.
And
So,
I think that too, everything that we're talking about is another reason that Saturday the 12th was so great because Kentuckians are hurting
mhm.
and Kentucky families have suffered so many things over these past several years at both levels. We're getting hit from both sides, from the federal government as well as the state government. And then we've had multiple national disasters. Natural, not national.
Yeah.
Well, it's national too, but natural disasters that are going to take years to get through, finally move through all of it. And I think people in our area, after all of the storms and the damage and the evacuations and everything else, they needed that uplifting part of the event because it was both. It was
Yep.
uplifting as much as it was an opportunity for everyday people to vent and feel
Mhm.
like their voices were heard and feel like they were seen.
Yeah.
And based
And
on
not alone.
and not alone. I hope we provide that for as many people as possible. That ultimately is the goal,
Yep.
you know. Um,
Yep. Absolutely.
so
All
there we
right.
are.
So find us. Come to the meeting on the 27th if you can. If you can't, check it out online on our YouTube channel. And we will be back next week, now that we're not in the middle of planning a protest at the moment, with our next episode. Share it widely, share it with everybody. Let us know what you want to hear about and what your concerns are.
Yes, and if there's anybody you want to hear from or a specific topic, we are happy to have guests and bring, whether it's at a meeting or on the podcast or whatever. We're here for all of it.
Absolutely. So until then, this is Roberto Henriquez.
And Dickerson.